Hello, this is Wasabi Boat Research, and today I'm really excited to be talking with Alex the Entreprenerd. And I came across you because we're both contributors at Badger, and I saw that earlier this summer you were leading an event that Badger was doing with ETH Global that was basically taking people through the process of writing strategies to do WBTC or Bitcoin, other Bitcoin assets, doing farming strategies. And those would kind of eventually feed into some of the Badger products or some of the Badger Yearn collaboration vaults. There's currently a Badger Yearn WBTC vault. And this is the core of Badger, what Badger is doing, and something that I'm really interested in. So the idea is that, users can put in WBTC and Badger and Yearn work together to find the best strategies for earning yield on that across DeFi and put it together in a automated product so that whenever there's a new yield strategy that comes up somewhere in DeFi, someone like Alex, a strategist, would write Solidity code that basically automates doing the yield farming and then passes the yield on to the users. And so this is, a super interesting idea in DeFi, and a lot of different people are doing it, but I didn't see a lot of people who have the same passion for teaching and sharing the knowledge as Alex did. So that's like one of the things that really caught my eye when I saw the stuff that you were doing. So whenever I see someone who's doing something interesting in DeFi and is good at teaching it, I try to get them on and extract everything into a conversation and publish it so more people can learn and get into this stuff. So thanks so much for talking with me today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So I noticed that you have a YouTube channel, and that's been up for a long time, and you're talking about general programming topics and doing tutorials, but then recently you switched into DeFi and doing a lot of Solidity code reviews and stuff. So what was it that triggered the switch to DeFi for you and got you interested in it?
Yeah, I really appreciate the question. So to give a context to the listeners, I've been working remotely for almost 10 years now, and mostly as a freelancer or as a consultant, and slowly becoming an entrepreneur, actually, owning my own business and just doing consulting as like mostly a hobby. Just like teaching is more of a thing that I'm passionate about. And mostly as a way to capitalize on the various topics that I was consulting on, I started the YouTube channel as a way to basically recap the things that I was teaching, and with the hopes of ideally getting some additional clients, some extra opportunities from it. And the reason why I did switch was that I was teaching basically full stack JavaScript, some TypeScript, some front end, some back end, that kind of stuff, basically making websites. And I'd say that at the beginning of 2021, it was clear to me that the Ethereum was going to be a massive opportunity. And I was very lucky to see that through various hackathons, bounties, security bounties as well, there was basically the opportunity to be paid very well to learn these topics. You're literally, like, as a student, it's very rare. Typically, you have to pay to learn. But in this space, you actually get paid to learn, and you get rewarded very favorably. So I decided to just stop coding front end, stop coding JavaScript, and just commit fully to becoming a Solidity developer. And basically participated in hackathons and then studied as much as I could to make the switch completely. And you can see that in my YouTube publishing history, where basically I stopped making videos because of the opportunity cost of, maybe today I could have written a new full stack JavaScript course, and it could have helped a lot of people. Probably would have been, I could have had more, more spread. It could have been seen by many people. But I thought that going deeper in the rabbit hole of Ethereum would have been a bigger opportunity, and it would have been also just a more interesting job.
Cool. And, the the Ethereum universe is so huge. You have, lending and DeFi and NFTs. So what was it that landed you into the sort of yield farming aggregation and led you to Badger within DeFi?
That's a great question. So I basically started working, or at least I knew about Ethereum in 2017 before the crazy bull run it was going to have, and after the when the bear market came, I basically stopped looking into the topics, and I just used Ethereum basically to pay for traveling. And I remember being in Costa Rica in 2019. With my credit cards being blocked, and basically buying food, buying Uber food through Uber Eats via Ethereum. I think through a coupon website or something like that. But that was my level of knowledge back then. And then what happened was, Yearn happened, and so I basically started noticing. And then Clubhouse happened as well, which really made it easy to listen in on some of the thought leaders in the space, such as Robert Leshner, Kane, Andre Cronje, OX Maki, and Chris, who actually hosted one of those talks as well, which is probably how I first started learning about Badger as well. And so I basically found that by just being, I guess, by listening and by going on Twitter, and stalking the right people, you could learn a lot of stuff. And so that's how I got fascinated with the idea of yield farming, which is fundamentally the idea of risk-free profits. That's basically what it is. You find such an imbalance in the market that you fundamentally, or I guess it's an arbitrage, but fundamentally, it's such an imbalance where you have no risk, or at least you have only counterparty risk, because the other protocol can rug you. But basically, you're making these free funds, you're getting your free interest on your money, on your tokens, which I thought is fascinating. And it kind of spiraled down into doing security contests, into doing hackathons, and fundamentally, it's a very highly stimulating job. And so I just, I just can't stop. It's so interesting, and it just keeps becoming more interesting with time.
So let's go into a little bit more. So the product that I kind of associate, I think you've probably worked on a lot of different things, but the one that I think about with you most is the WBTC vault at Badger. So the idea with that is wrapped BTC is a fully backed form of Bitcoin that lives on Ethereum. So for every Bitcoin that you send to this, they have that in storage that's backing this Ethereum ERC20 token, which represents Bitcoin. And the idea is that you submit that to the Yearn vault or to the Badger vault, and that vault executes a series of yield farming strategies to earn these risk-free or low-risk returns on the assets. And then the protocols take a fee in exchange for that, which some goes to the protocol and some goes to the strategist that developed the strategy. So right now I'm looking at the Badger app, and it's telling me that for every WBTC that I deposit, I can earn a return of between 3.25% to about 10.25% APY on that. So can you just give like a high level overview of where does that yield come from? What's happening under the hood to generate that yield for the user?
Yeah, I love this question. And to fully answer this question and to appreciate what happened, we basically, I'd love to cover kind of the history of DeFi, quote unquote, or, the latest part of it. And fundamentally, that was kickstarted a little over a year ago by the Compound protocol. When you can check their white paper. And fundamentally, the Compound protocol is a lending protocol that it allows you to deposit your asset, let's say WBTC. It allows you to deposit that. And because you deposited that, it will pay you back with more WBTC, which is accrued by lending some WBTC back. So you put some WBTC, somebody else borrows it, and you can imagine that the reason why they're borrowing it is either because they want to have some leverage, or because they want to go short. Those are the typical two use cases for borrowing. And through the interest that they pay back to the protocol, which is paid back in the same token, is paid back in WBTC, then you can basically earn a cut of those protocol fees. At the same time, to incentivize liquidity, Compound introduced the idea of a liquidity mining program, which means that they're going to create a governance token, which is a token that allows you to govern or control the protocol through voting. And that token can also be exchanged on various exchanges such as Uniswap. So fundamentally, the combination of Uniswap, a permissionless decentralized exchange that allows anybody to list any token and swap it for whatever they want through the X times Y equals K formula, plus the addition of the liquidity mining program, which means that we're going to give you, free tokens, quote unquote, free tokens for using our protocol. And those tokens, you can view them more like ice cream coupons. You can basically redeem some ice cream for a limited amount of time. In the case of Compound, about 3 years of emissions. And that basically allows you, if you're keen on this idea of arbitrage, or if you play poker, because a lot of poker players have this idea of expected value. And fundamentally, if you see the Compound opportunity, you could have seen that by depositing some tokens, you're going to get back some of their Compound token. And then by borrowing some WBTC, you will actually get back some Compound token as well. And fundamentally, that introduces the idea of leverage farming, which is the idea that you're going to deposit and borrow, and then deposit and borrow, et cetera, to be paid back in the governance token. Literally, you're just stacking coupons, just like you will stack credit card discounts by going through the entire loop of, and it's something that actually happened in the real world. You used to be able to take credit cards, use them for their rewards, and then use the credit card to buy prepaid cards for, let's say, $500 at Target. And then basically you get back your $500, but you also get back some cash back from the initial credit card company. And fundamentally, by doing that, you can get literally free money. And that's the equivalent here. It's not free money, it's free governance tokens, which again, you can view them mostly as coupon. And so once Compound did that, everybody else did. You have idle.finance, yam.finance, harvest.finance. Basically, that was what kickstarted DeFi Summer. And in a way, the champion of DeFi Summer was Yearn, which fundamentally used some of these strategies as a way to produce returns on stable coins and a various amount of assets. So once you understand that, and you can see the history, you can see that we're basically at, I would argue, the third or fourth generation of these types of farms that basically use emissions as a way to kickstart initial liquidity. And it has been interesting to see how some of these farms that have no underlying value, quote unquote, no underlying value, end up becoming the Ponzi farm, the one where you see 10,000 APY and then the day after it goes to zero. And I bet you know some of these. While some other that are more backed by the technology or by the actual usage done by real people, they end up becoming completely sustainable, and they end up fundamentally being the few ones that are still here that you can still see, and Compound being one of them, who's so well used that now they're also releasing a how do you say it, an institutional product, right? Where they're literally offering 4% fixed APY, fixed APR to institutions because the protocol was so well kickstarted through liquidity mining.
So if I had to summarize that into two buckets, if you asked where the yields in DeFi come from, so bucket A is lending. So I think someone that doesn't understand DeFi will get that. Like, I lend out my tokens to you, and you want to use those to either short or leverage long. In exchange for that, I charge you an interest rate and you keep the interest rate. And then number two is this new DeFi idea, which is like, you're starting up a protocol, you have created tokens that govern that protocol, and you want to distribute those widely in the community so that they have value, there's liquidity for them, and they're decentralizing your protocol. And in exchange for that, you're going to ask me to deposit some BTC or some other asset into your smart contract, and then you're distributing that governance token as a reward for kind of interacting with that protocol. Is that
exactly
are those the two main buckets? Got it.
I'd say so, and I would like to add that the governance protocol, the governance tokens are basically a new primitive or a new way to gather interest around causes, and we've seen that being done for social causes as well as for DeFi, for mostly financial technology. And so along with the price that you can have, because again you have the Uniswap-like way of swapping assets, which anchors anything to anything else, right? Because as long as you have an ETH pool with whatever asset, you basically, your asset is liquid immediately. But the other side of it is the real governance, i.e. people engaging, a community building around it and making decisions on the protocol, which end up becoming a huge part of the value that these tokens have. So fundamentally, you see with just like how you would look at Bitcoin, which is priced in, or at least one of the fundamentals is the amount of people that use it. In the same way, the amount of people around the specific protocol is a huge part of why the token is wanted in the first place.
Got it. So now I want to take a second to kind of explain. So like the lending and the governance token farming, those are kind of like the two building blocks. And that was what was going on last summer. And in just a year, we've gotten kind of the next level of complexity. So something like the Yearn Vault and the Badger Vault, on top of that, what happens is you can say, one of these things, you could call one of these things like, deposit it here and to get interest. That's kind of one strategy for earning yield, and depositing into somewhere else to get their governance token, that's another strategy. And the next level on top of that are these kind of multi-strategy vaults. Can you kind of introduce that? Where did that come from? And kind of give us an outline on how the multi-strategy vault builds on the kind of basic building blocks.
Yeah, and I'd say that looking deeply at the, for example, the WBTC Yearn Vault and the work we did as Badger, that we did together with Yearn on it, it really makes you appreciate how early we are. Because if you just look at the sheer amount of WBTC, which I believe is over $10 billion, where the total DeFi value locked in on DeFi postal list is 80 billion, which means that it's 1/8 of all tokens are WBTC in terms of market cap. It makes you understand that in a way we're very early in terms of the allocations that can be handled by these protocols. And so what does that mean? That means that if you wake up one day and you see a liquidity mining protocol or a set of incentives, you're going to see a number. You're going to see an APR or an APY number. You can see that on Aave, Compound, etc. And so when you look at that number, what that number means, that number is the dollar converted expected value of the emissions, and emissions is a specific keyword we're going to have to define, emissions of the protocol tokens. So what that means is that if you put, let's say if you put one Bitcoin, one WBTC on Compound, you are expected to get back 10 comp token, just to make a simple example. And then what those 10 comp tokens right now are worth, let's say they're worth $300 each. So you were going to get back $3,000 in a year. So fundamentally, from doing that kind of math, you can then extrapolate an APR. However, since the emissions are capped, which means that there's only so many Compound tokens that are going to be emitted in over a year or over a month or over a specific period of time, that means that if you were to add too much WBTC, let's say you were to add $1 billion in WBTC, then the emissions that would normally yield, in this example, something like 5%, they actually will end up giving you a return that is way lower, because again, the emissions are capped, while the amount of collateral that you can put in can go to infinity in a way, or it can go to a very high number. And so once you realize that there, in a way, the plate is too small, there's not enough for everyone, then the natural solution will be to have a vault. Fundamentally, you will want to have multiple strategies for allocating your WBTC. Because if you have only one strat, there's only so much WBTC that it can accommodate. While if you have multiple strategies, you can have more WBTC.
Yeah, so I guess to summarize what you said, the idea is that, these liquidity mining programs where they distribute the governance tokens, they can come and go because they're, time limited usually, and they can be diluted by a lot of more money rushing in, because they'll say, we're going to allocate 100 tokens per week, and that's distributed among everyone who's in the vault. So more money in the vault waters down your percentage of those tokens that you're getting, right? So you kind of need, that's the idea of the vault, is it's a group of strategies together that are intelligently allocated among those strategies in the same way like a big hedge fund will have little hedge funds and give 20% to each, or give a certain amount to each, and they're running different kind of strategies. Is that a good kind of analogy?
Yeah, exactly. That's a great analogy. And the thing that I really enjoy about DeFi, especially as I'd say a computer science background person. So and I'm not sure if that's like a personal experience of mine or if it's shared, but like as a engineer, it's sometimes really hard to understand financial people, because they just talk about stuff like in a different way. They just view the world differently. So and the same thing happens to normal people with nerds. It's just that there's a divide, and you have to bring some context, try to find some common ground to make sure that people can actually understand what you're trying to do or trying to say. The joke goes that for physicists or rocket scientists, you basically need a bachelor just to understand how smart they are, right? And so sometimes there's that divide. And from my experience, it has been really interesting, because I fundamentally am learning economy and business intelligence and these topics through experimenting with them. And so if you were to extend this hedge fund analogy, we are at the point where the market is so inefficient that you literally see free money out the window. That's literally the analogy with the free coupons and the liquidity incentives. That's the point we're at. While the hedge funds are doing risk-based arbitrages that are based on future projections, which is something that if we were to do now, it basically would be like a massively more complicated set of steps. So I see us as like a beginning to get to that point. And the beauty of our space is that on one end, we can emulate every advancement that has been done. The Flash boys doing arbitrages based on future value, doing projections, all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, because we are building on new primitives, we can actually have, self-repaying loans, which is something that doesn't exist in CeFi. And so fundamentally, for every new innovation that comes from just bridging it from CeFi, we also have these new types of ideas that are absolutely, they come from here. They're completely DeFi native, and they will be impossible to do on a centralized finance system. And that goes back to the beauty of this space. It's that there's the old, which is every year you'll see more of the old coming along, but every year you're also gonna see some of the new, which is completely unexpected and completely, it's gonna surprise you every time.
Cool. And this is kind of like a bigger picture economics question, because I know, you're in the market every day looking for these arbitrage opportunities, these distortions that you can build strategies for. And one thing that you realize pretty quickly, looking at a lot of different DeFi protocols, is that there's a huge difference in the yields that are on offer for stable coins. So like a dollar peg stablecoin or euro peg stablecoin, compared to something like BTC or WBTC or other ETH, things like that. Like, I would say it's pretty easy to get returns of like 10, 15, 20% on stable coins. And for something like BTC and ETH, you're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% yields. So what is it about the market that makes it harder to get the high yields on things like BTC and ETH?
That's a really complex question, and so I can give you a few ideas to reach to your own conclusions. I think it's very hard to say, but the most basic answer has to deal with use cases and utility and flexibility, and that actually goes into some controversial ground where they say that DAI is backed 60%, if I'm not mistaken, by USDC. Mm-hmm. Right? So some of these new primitives that we have in DeFi are the creation of stable coins that are over collateralized. And there's something really powerful and way beautiful about having a system where we all agree to throw some money behind a wall, a smart contract, and in exchange for that agreement of maintaining our health factor above 1, we are going to get back a stable coin that is a real stable coin, because it's overly backed. It's not diluted. It's not 10 times. There's not 10 times more of the money than the value underlying. So there's something beautiful in there. But that also shows you the flexibility, because if I risk getting liquidated on Maker by putting my Bitcoin, and my Bitcoin has a drawdown potential of, let's say, 50%, and I think during the bear market it even did 75% even this year. So you can imagine the added complexity and the added risk of just losing your collateral, to basically squeeze out some percentage. And that goes back to the idea that we are in an imbalanced and imperfect market. It's definitely not perfect, because as long as you have these moderate side allocations, you're going to be able to find great yield. And so the specifics of why fundamentally stables are beating the native assets such as ETH or BTC, I would say, is mostly because they are more flexible and simpler to use with lower risk. And so every protocol that is bootstrapping liquidity will try to bootstrap those assets compared to something that is more volatile. So fundamentally, I guess you can view it. You can also view it the opposite way. But fundamentally, today you will want to use your dollars to gain more ETH. You wouldn't necessarily use your ETH to gain more dollars. You would just want to stay in ETH. So and you see that with the 6 million plus staked in ETH2, where the demand for staking is so big compared to the amount of options that you have, that you basically get over allocated in these native assets. So I would say it's just the nature of the market and the technology, where it's so early that it just takes a couple of big whales to basically dry out the yield, especially for the native assets.
So I want to go back to the WBTC vault, and the cool thing, like we talked about, is that there can be multiple different strategies going on under the hood. And I want to point people towards a cool site called Yearn.watch. So the WBTC vault is managed by Yearn, and then on top of that, there's a vault at Badger that if you're in the vault, you might as well go in the Badger vault, because it gives you everything from Yearn plus additional Badger tokens on top to increase the yield even more. So just so people are aware when we talk about the Yearn vault versus the Badger vault. So if you go to Yearn.watch, you can see I think they have at least, 20 or 30 vaults on here, and you can click through and see the exact mix of strategies that are going on in each vault. So I want to kind of get even deeper into the weeds here and look at the strategy mix that's going on in the Bitcoin vault and kind of explain, it looks like there are 9 different strategies that are allocated right now, and go through the top. It looks like, there are 4 that are dominant, and then there's a handful of ones that are kind of like 2, 3, 4, 5% under the hood there. So let's just start with some of these. The biggest one, if you go and see the breakdown here, is called Vesper WBTC, and it looks like about 35% of the funds are allocated to that strategy right now, and the yield of that is about 4% APY, if I'm reading that correctly. So what does that strategy do?
Yeah, and just to give more context into how to use the tool, if you go in the strategies tab, when you check the vault, you'll also see the debt ratio and the total debt. The debt ratio is the percentage of total TVL that is allocated, while the total debt will be the amount in Bitcoin, in native asset, that the strategy is currently using. And so to answer your question with the Vesper WBTC strategy, there is a protocol called Vesper.finance, which currently is offering around 1% earning rate on WBTC. And then they are incentivizing this yield with 3.89% APY on their native Vesper token. And so if you sum those up, you basically end up getting almost 5% APY. And that has been a very consistent source of yield for the vault in the last few months. And as such, it did get a pretty strong allocation.
So that, if we're going back to the initial kind of buckets, that would be just a straight yield farming play. So the vault deposits WBTC, yes, and it gets Vesper tokens and then sells those in the...
It then compounds the Vesper tokens to buy more WBTC, giving continuous auto compounding of the WBTC, and it then reinvests them into Vesper. So fundamentally, it's relying on Vesper's own work to provide the native underlying yield, which most likely they're getting from either idle.finance or harvest.finance, which are, you can go through the stack in a way. It's actually an interesting thought experiment. But if you go through the stack of all these yield farming protocol, you'll see that at the core, idle and harvest are very common. And then above that, they also incentivize it through their Vesper token, which is the majority of the yield currently, 3.89% APY.
Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing, maybe even just changed since I looked at it earlier. What is the best place to look at the overall APY for that? Because I'm looking in the tab, the Vesper WBTC, and it says expected return 0.12. Is that 12% or is that...
Expected...
Is that... Am I looking at the right place there?
See.
If you go under detail,
details expected. I'm actually not seeing it. Maybe we're not on the same page. Let me make sure I send you the link. But fundamentally, the only real way to do this is through what are called reports. So you will go on the single vault page, then you will go in the strategies, and then for each strategy, you will click on its name, and you can see the report for those strategies. And that allows you to check the APR. In this case, so if you click on reports on the top, you'll see last 4 reports, average APR 4.65%. Or in the case of the Vesper strat, you should see 3.73% with a median APR of 3.82. And if you open each report, you can see the math that is being done. I do believe there are some quirks with this math, so don't take it at face value. Do your own research, do your own math. But fundamentally, what it's doing is it's calculating the time between the last harvest, the last report, and calculating the profit during that time to give a projection of the APR. Because obviously these are done over X amount of days or hours. While we're trying to get a quote for something that will happen over a year with the APR.
Got it. And do you have any expectation of how long this vault will stay good for? Like how long their yield farming program is, or what the future outlook is?
Yeah, to be frank with the specific of Vesper, I'm not sure when their yield farming is gonna end. So I would assume that until that ends, this is going to be one of the most dominant strategies, just because of how juicy the token emissions are. So the second that those ends, the yield source is going to end, as you can see, because the native APY is just 1%, while the boosted APY is almost 5%.
Got
So
it.
it is, and that's kind of the thing with yield farming in general, is you fundamentally want to find these emissions opportunities, because again, going back to the fact that the space is so young, the use case is the usage of borrowing, especially for WBTC, especially if you go and compound on Aave, you'll see that it's typically over 5 times more deposited asset than borrowed. So the demand for borrowing is way smaller than the demand for just getting that interest rate, right? Which means that in terms of sophisticated products, we're just not there yet. There's not enough sophisticated products. There's a few options protocols. There's some leverage farming you can do. Maybe you can provide liquidity with a dollar pair, and you can do some very sophisticated strategy. But fundamentally, beside those, it's mostly about native APRs through borrowing and lending, which again, as I said, it's the minority. And then the majority will be incentivized emissions.
Yeah. So that goes back to like the question of where why BTC is such a low yield. There's just a lot of people who want to supply their Bitcoin to be lent out in a safe, over collateralized way, and not a ton of people that want to borrow that.
Yeah, and also the trust in the asset is very high. Again, 1 out of 8 TVL is in Bitcoin, is WBTC. So there's a lot of trust in the asset, and people just want to park it wherever they can. So fundamentally, that's the current state of the network.
Cool. So let's then go to the next strategy. So 17% of the funds in the vault are in the single-sided CRV WBTC strategy, and that looks like the APR on that is about 3.94%. So what's going on there?
Yeah, and this is actually this fundamentally is a strategy that provides liquidity to the WBTC RENBTC curve pool, and it uses that curve token, or the curve LP token, and it then provides it on Convex to earn the Convex rewards, which are boosted by Convex and incentivized by their token as well. So again, it's fundamentally a curve and Convex farming strategy that provides liquidity to the curve protocol, and then it also uses Convex for the additional boost.
Okay, so maybe that's even a third bucket, like we talked about borrowing and lending, and then we talked about yield farming, and so then there's this third activity that can produce yield, which is providing liquidity. So the idea there is Curve has this big pool of RENBTC and WBTC, and those are both considered very safe because they're trusted, audited protocols, and you can see that they have the BTC in reserve that's backing up the REN and WBTC that they're issuing. So what Curve does is puts those together in a pool and lets people swap in between them, right? In exchange for doing that, they get some of the fees that are taken to do those swaps. Is that a high level understanding of what's going on there?
Yeah, that's actually a great insight. Fundamentally, this would be the third way to gain yield, is providing liquidity. Historically, or if you search into the various opportunities, especially on mainnet, you'll see that you incur the risk of impermanent loss, which is the idea that you have two assets, and one of the two assets goes up in value. But the more it goes up in value, the less of it you have, and the more of the lower value asset you end up getting, due to the fact that people want to buy the asset that has the higher value, and you're providing liquidity. So there is quote unquote risk there, and that's why they are a little more, generally more risky strategies. But in the case of a stable pool, which will be a curve pool of assets that are basically pegged to each other, or really close, tied to each other, and especially when they're so liquid, such as WBTC and RENBTC, you fundamentally can ignore the slippage risk, the risk of having too much RENBTC and having to swap back into WBTC, hence having to lose a little bit of that WBTC. And instead you can focus exclusively on the farming of the rewards. as well as the APY for providing the liquidity for the swaps, which based again on the usage on mainnet typically provides a boosted APY as well.
Next one on the list, you have generic Lev comp farm. So I guess is that compound finance? It looks like there's
this is the original. I would say that if you search Yearn's history, you'll see a author. It's called Arbing Sam, and you can find him on Twitter, Arbing Sam, and you'll see that that's basically his baby, and it's the idea of doing leveraged farming of compound. And that's because if you go on the Compound of Finance website, you'll see that depositing will yield some reward, and then borrowing will actually still yield some reward. You're going to pay, let's say, 5% APY to borrow, but you're going to get back a 7% APR on the rewards. And so through that difference, you end up being incentivized to lever up, and borrow and borrow and borrow and borrow. And fundamentally, that allows you to farm the compound token. And I do believe that that's one of the strongest yielding strategies on mainnet. Off the top of my head, I would say it should be around 6% APY.
It looks like I'm on the report page. It says 4.65 average and median about 5%. But yeah, that's definitely higher than some of the others, right?
Yeah.
Cool. And then the last one at 9% levered Aave WBTC. So that's similar to the compound. It's doing leveraged farming on Aave.
Yeah, this is basically our latest Badger strat that we added to the vault. And fundamentally, this is doing a similar thing. The main challenge in using the Aave as basically farming the Aave token is that the rewards are paid out in staked Aave. However, we found a way, and I guess alpha leak is that Uniswap V3 allows you to have basically stable pools as well, or at least really tightly closed assets. And so that allows us to have, even with very little liquidity, we can have a staked Aave to Aave pool, which allows us to then harvest the rewards in a very efficient way instead of having to wait the 10-day cooldown on staked Aave. And that's why the strat actually made it, because it provides a strong baseline APY, I believe 4% with low assets and something like 3.6% with the current amount, which is 9% total debt. And it fundamentally provides it as a baseline so that every other strat that is a little higher APY but couldn't be expanded, because again you're capped, especially on curve or on compound, you end up being capped. That actually enabled the strategy. Enabled the vault to get to a point where all of the strategies were pretty good in terms of APY, instead of having some strategies that weren't performing at all.
And so if you go through the rest of the vault, I don't want to go through all of them, but there's 5 more, and it just struck me that those 5 tend to have lower APYs, like in the 1% to 2% range, than the 4% and 5% range, like the heavier ones. So why include these little ones at all if they're just kind of watering down the higher return strategies?
Yeah, that's kind of the challenge with the WBTC vault, is that let's give you a very simple example. Let's say you have $10,000, especially on Polygon. Let's say you're on Polygon, you have $10,000. You're just gonna YOLO them into one protocol, right? Let's say you're gonna go on Iron.Finance V2. You're just gonna YOLO them, right? Because your allocation is small compared to the TVL of the protocol, which before its collapse, it was over $1 billion in TVL. So unless you had $1 billion to put in, you were not going to dilute the APR. However, when you have $100 million plus dollars of Bitcoin, you just can't put them in one place, right? And so, but you also want to have a few strategies that are highly liquid, so that people can withdraw without incurring slippage. And typically the leverage strategies either require higher gas, because you have to unwind your position, repay the debt, take a flash loan, all that kind of stuff. and perhaps they don't want to be touched. Like if you touch the levered position, you have to rebuild it again, and it's a waste of gas, waste of money, etc. So it's not particularly liquid as a strat. So by having these smaller strategies, you can still provide some base APY better than zero, and at the same time they're more liquid, which means that it's easier also to keep withdrawals cheap, especially for the average user. So those are the goals. And then you have the problem that, again, if you put everything on compound, which would be, the first intuition, the naive intuition is put everything on Vesper or everything on compound. Well, the APY is going to go to zero if you put everything on compound. So you can't do that.
Cool. So I think this kind of segues into the next question. And I'd love to hear more about all of the considerations that go into deciding this mix, because I know that, someone like you, if you come up with a new strategy and write it in Solidity and deploy it and it tests and is good, then you get a reward fee as part of that, right? So there's all these different strategists and they all want to get their reward fee. And then you have these additional considerations like liquidity, how quickly can you get out, and APY, and not wanting to dilute the pools if you put too much in. So how do you kind of balance all those competing interests in the strategy, and how does that process work? Like, is there a committee, or is it a smart contract, or what?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's very nuanced. I'd like to say in terms of BadgerDAO that at least the core team, which I'm part of, have voiced the fact that they're not particularly, they don't believe the strategies incentives to be aligned with the future of the DAO or the protocol. So as BadgerDAO, I believe that we will move away from it. And personally, as an individual, I actually like the strategist incentive. I think it rewards people for trying really hard. So I think it's great. But as a DAO, from conversation, I believe that the DAO doesn't really enjoy that, because it just creates a negative, toxic environment where everybody competes for themselves, right? Because I don't want you in the vault because I'm gonna lose my incentives. So I guess it's nuanced on that point. From my point of view, though, the simplest North Star is just what is the highest APY and what is the simplest way to achieve it with the lowest risk. That's the thing we at least I think we should I optimize for that, because you don't want to be like we could do some crazy leverage strategy for like a couple $1 million of TVL. But fundamentally, we wouldn't be sleeping at night. We would need to have bots. The gas cost to maintain it will probably be higher than even the returns. So you basically have to do some sort of sanity check on that. And then to give you, I guess, another alpha leak in terms of how you would actually do it, there are not even that sophisticated. There are bachelor level linear mathematics toolings that we are building that allows us to mathematically prove what is the optimal allocation. So fundamentally, in a year from now, the allocation is not going to be a human process. It's going to be a purely mathematical process. You just run the math. That's the allocation. Put it on a smart contract or on an Oracle. You're done. So that's something that will happen. And going with the metaphor of the hedge fund, we're at a point where you don't need that. Right? If you want to launch your own protocol or your own vaults, or even manage the vaults in general, there typically is a winning strategy, and most vaults don't have this 100 million plus TVL. So they're way easier to manage, and you just have the dominant strategy and the backup strategy. Typically, the dominant strategy is a little less liquid, and then the backup strategy is more liquid, something like depositing on Compound or Aave, so that it's easy to withdraw and you have no slippage. But when you start getting into 9 strategies, again, guiding light is going to be what is the highest APY you humanly can achieve. And then at the same time, the allocation is purely a mathematical process.
But so right now it's kind of just a committee that talks through and tries to balance these things, but eventually it will be a mathematical process.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, I guess you're hinting at the other side of the conversation, which is how does a strategy even get in the vault? and that is by committee, and it's done basically by white hats. You're going to have a committee of, in the case of Yearn, they call it the Safe Farming Committee. They have a due diligence document that you have to fill. They will go through, finding who the multi-sig owners are, whether the contracts are upgradable, what is are there any audits where all the things in the audit, actually all the recommendation were they implemented, or is the new code completely unaudited even though they have audits, all that kind of stuff. Badger has a similar type of committee. It's called the security board. Every strategy we write goes through the security board before we ever put it on the experimental zone. And if you're a Badger, you know that we do go through experimental zone and then guarded launch and then public launch. So we also have extra layers of checks. But in terms of the WBTC vault, a strategy will never go through unless it passes the Safe Farming Committee, which is managed by Yearn, and it's over 30 people, over 30 advisors. And then in terms of the flow that the strategy has to go through in order to actually get in the vault, it has to be published on mainnet. It has to go through 4 different people that will do their own review. And as the strategist, you have to basically do whatever the four strategists believe is right for the strategy to be still secure and safe. And so that is a very tiring process, a very tough process to go through. And but once you do, the strategy can go live, and manage a very noticeable amount of funds.
Yeah. And so when you're looking at this, is there any kind of thinking about, are you making kind of like a risk score, and if it's riskier than a certain arbitrary number, then you don't do it, or is it just kind of like pass fail for everything? Or
I would say that it's really hard to come up with this risk score. I like the idea. I know I think Harari, Idle, they have done it. I don't believe you can really do a safe score. I think there are some trademarks of insane risk. And when you see those are red flags, and you just never work. You're not gonna engage with that protocol. While for the more nuanced stuff, I think it's just I guess by feel or by talking to the other DAO. So it's just a really nuanced scenario. I can't come up with a generic answer. I don't think you can have a score though. I think. If they have, let's say they have an EOA, which means they use MetaMask to deploy their smart contracts and to manage them, you're never going to work with that protocol because it's unsafe, right? It gets, one account gets hacked, sleepy developer, you lose all the money, right? That's what it happens every week in DeFi. So those are red flags. And those mean that it's you're never going to work until they fix that. While some more nuanced stuff, such as the upgradability, that typically depends on how long the contracts weren't upgraded for, and maybe you're gonna talk to them and see whether they have plans to upgrade or not, that kind of stuff. So it becomes really nuanced, and I don't think there is a general answer to that. Although I would say that when you are doing due diligence, you will always just search for the nasty stuff, because as soon as you find the nasty stuff, you're done. You're not gonna work. So fundamentally, that's kind of the optic. You're trying to invalidate your idea, and you're trying to verify that the protocol is unsafe. Because if you fail to do so, and if enough people fail to say that it's unsafe, then you have enough certainty. And it's an unfalsifiable statement, but that's the best we got for now.
I love this idea about red flags, and I'm wondering if we can just go deeper on that. Like, if you have any other ideas. I mean, I'm not a coder. I don't write Solidity, so I can't kind of like audit code of stuff. But I know there are a lot of people listening who are like me and are Yield Farm pops up on Vfat and they want to kind of quickly check it out. So like, are there any other red flags that a non-technical person, when a new farm comes up or a new protocol, that they can like kind of scan through and see what would make you turn and run as fast as you can the other way?
Absolutely. I love this question. And I'd say that I'm a student of the community as well. So, if something goes on Vfat, then you probably also want to check rugdoc.io. And perhaps you also want to check Taki, Farmer Taki. I know he's been growing his channel by quite a lot recently. But fundamentally, these people are trying to inform. From my point of view, my experience comes from doing auditing contests and from having to do due diligence both for Yearn and for Badger through the WBTC Vault, as well as internally for Badger for other protocols as well. So the red flags are typically either if there is one source of failure, or if there is either confusion or an attempt to obfuscate. And I'll give you examples on this one because it's a little nuanced. And the other thing is just fundamentally you're looking for a way to get rug pulled. Like again, the mentality when you want to be safe about this stuff is, how do they hack me? You want to be aggressive about finding a way to get to hack the protocol, or to basically to lose your money, because you want to get into that mindset, because that's how you find the vulnerability. Where if you're trying to defend against it instead of attacking it, you may hold yourself back, and you're not going to really think about all the creative ways to hack. So in terms of so the biggest red flag is EOA. Do they have a MetaMask? And so basically you're going to go and search for the keyword either governor or owner on the smart contract on Etherscan. And if governor or owner links to an EOA, which means that you don't see it as a contract, but you see it as a normal MetaMask account, one of those that has, balances for Ether and balances for ERC20, that's a big red flag, because it means that their contract is owned by one person. Okay, and one person, we have proof, we've seen it so many times, they can get hacked, they can get sleepy, they can lose their keys, they can commit them to GitHub, they can make a dumb mistake, and it happens. And so you cannot trust that. It's an immediate red flag. It's a shown of incompetence at the maximum level in terms of security. So you're not going to tolerate that. The next step will be obfuscation. So let's say you're farming something with, they use as MasterChef, right? MasterChef V2 from Sushi. If you've been in the space, you're familiar with it. At least you should be at least familiar with it. There's I think withdraw funds, emergency withdraw, and there's the withdraw, and then there's harvest, and then there's deposit, like these functions right here. So if you see something that is too different from the MasterChef, while it being copy pasted from MasterChef, that may be an attempt to use something familiar to deceive you. And I've seen that being done with like underscore token instead of token for the name of the asset. And that's something that it's really hard to notice. But once you see a developer that does that, it's again a red flag, because you're like, either they're again incompetent and they just put random names without thinking about it, or they wrote it in a way that is purposely trying to deceive you, so that if you don't pay attention, you don't notice, and again you get deceived. So those two to me are the biggest ones. And then I think it fundamentally, I guess the last point is probably hype versus value. If you want to be making insane gains, you do want to go for these momentum plays and just find the hypest project before it goes on the wave. But typically the hypest project is also the one with the least fundamentals, and you can go on their GitHub and see that they have copy pasted the contract that was copied without tests, without anything. It's just a copy paste basically. There's nothing wrong with it, but there's nothing new about it. And so if a project only goal is just to grow without having any fundamental tech, that may also be a sign. And it may also be a sign that they have good marketing. So again, it's nuanced, but it may also be a sign that they're just trying to get as much TVL as possible before rug pulling. And so you really want to be mindful of that.
Yeah, that's something I've really noticed, like especially on these newer projects that come up on Vfat or whatever. Like if they call themselves just, we're the new yield farm, or like this project is a great yield farm, where it's just like not even trying to do anything, not even like pretending that they have the business or some kind of like innovative thing that they're doing, and the whole process is just to be a farm. That's to me a huge red flag.
Yeah, I agree. And I really like, there's, I don't remember the name, but there's a YouTube channel that talks about the history of dark web stores, darknet. But basically, the Silk Road, I think one is called Empire Market, something like that. But fundamentally, the history of these dark net stores is very similar to the story of these anonymous yield farms, Ponzi farms that offer, 10,000x APY, stuff like that. Because one day or another, the risk they're incurring in offering these random products without any thought, without literally any plan, becomes so high that their only option is basically to rug pull, because otherwise they even lost their time, you know. So you really want to be mindful of that, of just the incentives in general. Unless you're finding like people that are really in it for the tech, which is a meme, but the people that are in it for the tech, they're trying to build something that is new, while the people that are in it for the rug pull or the money, they're not gonna compensate that. And it would be deceiving for me to say that if I was doing this for free, I would be doing it. I probably wouldn't. So I'm not gonna be an hypocrite. But I think you need to find a team that has a passion for something more. And in the case of Badger, I think the biggest passion is like really helping people learn and people engaged. And something I really enjoyed was we did an art bounty. I think there was like 70 submissions, something like really engaging. So I think that's something that we should do even more. And I like the fact that everybody at the DAO wants to do more of that. So I think those are great signs, engaging the community and trying to keep that community alive and bring some added value to it. And that's why the token becomes valuable, is because it's part of a tribe, and a tribe that is trying to do something cool.
Yeah. And going back to like red flags, I would say that's another very quick way that you can find out about a project. Just join their Discord, and if it's full of people saying, when moon sir or whatever, if you instantly get 15 scam messages, and it's, no one is having like a high level discussion then.
Yeah. And I also would say that there's like templates at this point, the goose.finance template that was used both on BSC and Polygon. If anything, it taught me about the in a way the futureless destiny of the pure the protocol token. That without any value, the protocol token is basically just a Ponzi scheme where it's musical chairs, and that's what happens. That it goes to whatever value it gets because of hype, and then it goes to zero. And you've seen it, to name a few, Yearn.finance. You're gonna see it maybe with DinoSwap. I'm not sure. Maybe they're gonna do great. You may see with Badger if we fail. To be fair, it's something that can happen if you don't have enough value to back it up. Or enough innovation or growth to back it up. But fundamentally, you see it a lot with the Ponzi farm, the one that promises a lot of returns without doing anything new. And that's basically they called it the third generation yield farm. The third generation yield farm is the pure Ponzi. I would say that the DeFi yield farm instead is a protocol that is trying to bootstrap liquidity to do something that either is new to the space, and it may be brought from CeFi, so it may not be new to the world, but it's still new to Ethereum, or they're literally trying to do something completely new that just can't be done on a traditional CeFi.
Alex, this has been super helpful. I really appreciate your time. I just have like 2 more questions and I'll let you go. So this is, if you're talking to someone, maybe they're just getting into DeFi, maybe they know a little code, maybe they were you before getting into DeFi, right? They know another language and they're looking at learning Solidity, and they see that there are opportunities to be very well paid by being a strategist, not just yield farming for yourself, but working with someone like Badger or Yearn to create these really professional yield farming products. What would you tell them? Is the coding side more important, or is the just understanding DeFi and finding new farms and new strategies quickly more important? Or what advice would you give someone like that?
Yeah, well, from my experience, it's very easy to find. It's very easy to tell people what to do if you are doing the thinking. But it's very hard to find people that want to do the thinking for you. So if you want to get this opportunity, and you can literally go to any protocol today, but if you want to get that opportunity, you just want to show that you're willing to put in the work, as in you're willing to go through the effort of figuring the thing out. The specific of coding versus not coding, I think coding forces you to do the thinking, so it's a good idea to structure the work. But in reality, you can do this without coding either, because fundamentally, if you can convey a strategy, let's say you do a Google Doc where you go through every transaction, you take a screenshot of all the protocol, and then you figure out how the contract works, or at least you figure out the basics by looking at the Etherscan transactions, and then you can explain it to somebody. That's already a big enough contribution to help. And then it really depends what you want to get out of the DeFi. In terms of doing it, if you want to reroll, if let's say you're a developer and you want to reroll, I haven't seen a space where it's so easy to reroll because of multiple reasons. One, there's not enough developers in general. Two, there's a lot of money to be had. And three, everything is open source. You can literally, the best in the world, you can just literally you don't have to steal their work, but you can read all of their work and figure out what they did. So you can teach yourself. And as long as you're willing to teach yourself, as in literally go and read the code of the people that came before you, you're gonna, there's no obstacle. It's just a matter of doing it. So I think it's the best space to do that. And in terms of incentives, there's there's Immunify and Code Arena, where you can be paid to find vulnerabilities. And then there's Gitcoin and ETH Global that do hackathons basically every month or every 2 months. So as long as you go through those, you will have immense rewards. Let's say even 5 to 10K potentially a month, even if some people on Code Arena even a week to learn. And then you can also just through doing the hackathons, you will land a job because you're building a portfolio. So I think the opportunity is incredible, and I highly recommend. Even if you're remotely interested, you should at least give it a try.
Yeah, and I mean, some of my experience is in building websites, and just over the last 10 years, you see that it goes from you have to know HTML and CSS and do a ton of work and maybe even host it yourself, to something like WordPress or Wix, where where you just don't really need to get into the details, and there are all these kind of tools that take it to a higher level. Do you think those same things are going to happen in DeFi, so where someone can just kind of like use a graphical interface to make a new strategy, or is that where this is going?
Yeah, for sure. I honestly, I'm just limited by time, and I'd say that we're at a point, and I've been coding maybe for 8 years straight, like professionally. So I can assure you that the first 5 years, I remember having to write one line of code and seeing if it compiles and it works. Right? That was the idea. You write one line. If you write 2 lines, then there's a mistake. Now you have to debug 2 lines. So it's too much. You may as well just write one line at a time. Mm-hmm. I think the tooling in Ethereum is so at this early stage in terms of how sophisticated it can get, how abstracted away it could get, that you basically have to do that in general. You have to write one line of code and see if it works, because it really is very painful to make a mistake, because now you have to debug a trace of contracts that have all these weird hexadecimals, and you have to literally follow the red rabbit down all these error messages, and it's really confusing. So it is very unintuitive. Nobody will help you. And I think at the preface you said there's few people teaching, because in this space there is an incentive not to teach, because you're basically leaking alpha, and leaking alpha means you're breaking your own bags. So there's no incentives there, but at the same time there's such a demand for developers that on the other end people are looking for you basically if you want to reroll. So to answer more directly, yes, there will be visual tools that allow you to write the strategy. Most likely there will even be, as soon as we have some better GPT-free AI access, we're gonna basically just say on harvest, go on Curve, take the Curve token and stake it, or something like that, and there will be an AI writing that for you. You just have to find the opportunity and think about how that works. Yeah.
Wow. And that's interesting. Like, for someone, you talked about the people that are out there teaching. I've seen some courses. There's the zombie course, or some YouTube channels like yours, and there are a few others out there. Do you have a course or somewhere that you would recommend someone to go if they want to start doing Solidity now?
I honestly, okay, the good resources that I found are from Austin Griffith. So you want to check him out 100%. And then there's Patrick at Chainlink. And I think it's called Alpha Chain on YouTube. You definitely want to check those out. Those are most likely the best resources you'll find, because every other resource that is not actually working with DAOs is just not real. Like they can teach you, the Flashbot arbitrage script, but it's not the MEV guys are laughing at you. Okay, they're not. It's not the real one. To really learn, you want to do the hackathons, especially if global or Gitcoin, because again, you're talking directly to the DAOs and the protocols. So the closer you can get to those, like the closer you can get to basically reading Uniswap V2, Aave, Compound, Yearn V1 and Yearn V2, and even Badger, which set V3 is based on Yearn V1. So we basically took inspiration. We used it. So the closer you can get to that source, the better. So I highly recommend. I think in a month from now there will be. Now, right now there's going to be the ETH Global Hackathon, and in a month from now there's going to be Gitcoin Round 11. If you're seriously interested in working in DeFi, you have to participate on Gitcoin Round 11, 100%. And if you have the time this summer, you should check out the ETH Global Hackathon as well, 100%, because you're getting paid $2,000, $3,000 to learn. I can't imagine a better opportunity. It's literally you never find it anywhere else.
It's crazy. Like, there's this thing like ETH is a dark forest, for all your transactions that you're submitting on Uniswap. There's like bots that are trying to front run you, but like it sounds like you're saying that like Solidity training can be a dark forest too, and there's people that are kind of like putting out shit information that's like not the good stuff, and you need to go directly to the DAOs and get the good stuff.
Yeah, more so than dunk on the I guess small entrepreneurs, which they're still doing their part. So it's a good thing. It's better than nothing. Like I also launch a Udemy course, so you can label me bad as well. It's fine. But I think that if you go on Twitter and you just start stalking the right people, basically, a few names, maybe MEV Intern, MEV Alpha Leak, everybody at Flashbots. You can stalk me as well. And then you can stalk Andre Cronje, Banteg. And if you ever find Arbing Sam, that's probably the guy you actually want to stalk, because he came up with most of the interesting strategies at Yearn as well. So basically, if you just pay close attention, the opportunity is literally in front of you. It's just that nobody will ever tell you to do it. I'm not gonna tell you to do it. But if you ask me what you should do, I'll tell you. It's like the motivation has to come from you, but the opportunity is here. There's no other place with such opportunity.
So last question for you. What do you think the future looks like for, in particular, BTC farming? So I've seen some new protocols that come up that try to generate yield by selling options, which, I mean, that's quite, you talk about like a riskless strategy. That's a quite risky strategy, because if the market moves against you, you're screwed. Or, these highly leveraged strategies that just kind of compound like rug pull risk or other kinds of risk. So what do you think is the next frontier, and will the yield start coming back up, or do you think we're in kind of like a low yield situation for a long time?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question, and it's the reason why I'm working at BadgerDAO, is because I love to figure that out and see what we can do. Fundamentally, I think we are at the end of a paradigm. We're at the end of the Yearn V1 paradigm, of the idea that you can have just farm the coupons, farm the governance tokens, and you can be good. I think that's just as the market grows, that's just not going to be more realistic, because this is literally an arbitrage. And again, arbitrage is the keyword, is an arbitrage or risk-free return where you're literally being paid just to hold the asset, right? That's not normal. returns are proportional to risk, right? If you go and check portfolio theory, that's basically the idea. The higher you can increase your returns if you increase your risk, as long as the market is efficient. I think we're getting to a point where the market will start to become more efficient. And as the market becomes more efficient, as yield farmers, in order to guarantee quote unquote, to find, again, risk-free arbitrages, we're going to have to change the way in which we do them. So the way to move with that is, as you said, is with options. It's going to be with double-sided liquidity provision, where you provide, for example, WBTC and USDC. And if you, listener, if you have ideas on how to hedge that, we will hire you immediately. But fundamentally, we will have to move toward using more sophisticated solutions to basically get the same returns, because these more basic returns are like, you can just code them on like a UI, and I guess InstaDApp will be the idea. If InstaDApp can do it, then we have to do better than InstaDApp, because InstaDApp is providing one very safe idea, let's say the leveraged Aave, for everybody. And they take no fees, they take no cut, it's super easy. And so that's one side of the future of yield farming, is that it's just going to be a bunch of open source strategies that everybody can use without any fees. And that was foretold at the beginning of Yearn. My opinion is instead that strategists and the strategies that we need to run will have to become more sophisticated with the time. One half comes from the hedge fund, the playbook, just do, quant stuff. And then the other side will come from DeFi magic, self-repaying loans, magic leverage through quote unquote magic internal money, and basically finding ways to get that yield back through more creative solutions.
Yeah, I mean, my take on that is I would love to be able, as a user, to see, and I think Yearn may have done this, but I couldn't find it, just a risk score that is associated with each strategy. Because, I definitely think that, what we're doing in DeFi, there are risks, right? Like you open rect.com, there's hacks every day. There's all kinds of risks in the system. Yeah. And even if theoretically there's no risk, there could be a bug, there could be a human flaw, there could be an audit mistake or whatever, right? So there are all these risks. And I don't see how that risk is a different risk than like writing options, right? Like there's someone that's guessing what's the safest, highest yield you can get without risk of your options getting blown out. Like I don't see those risks as like different, because they're both going to lose me money. So I would love to be able to like
I love the quote. Yeah, I would say that the main difference is that in order to make money through options, you have to, and it's the same thing as sports betting. It's actually very interesting. If you go on YouTube, you'll find some very interesting people that do sports betting. Which is sports betting, poker, and arbitrage is way closer to the yield farming state right now compared to hedge funds and the complexity of business intelligence and quants and stuff like that. But basically, like the way you would make profit from options is that your model is telling you that the implied volatility of the option is different from the price that you're paying it for. So that would be a price arbitrage based on a projection. Okay, so there is the risk that you made the wrong projection, but you could argue that that's how you get quote unquote free returns. That's how, in theory, hedge funds will do it. So we are at a point where you don't have to do it now, and we probably won't have to do it for a little longer. But as everybody else starts to learn, and let's say you as a sophisticated user, non-technical entity, so non-developer, still with sophistication because you still do your own research and do the entire thing, you will probably have tools that allow you to do all of the strats that we're doing today, maybe in a year or two from now, and build them for yourself. 100%. You're just going to manage your own bot, and it's going to be like a visual UI, all slick and nice and all of that. But so the challenge we will have as Badger and in our collaboration with Yearn will be to have strategies that are so much more sophisticated while still maintaining the same risk profile to be able to offer it that way. If we can't do that, then we fundamentally will have to change paradigm and become something else. And obviously we'll have to deal with that once the time arrives. But for now, I think we have ways, and finding ways to hedge liquidity provision is basically the way to do that. And another advancement that you see if you're following the space is just leverage through collateralizing your interest assets. So imagine having IBBTC, which already yields interest, and being able to lever up on IBBTC, which we will argue is a fairly safe investment. So that kind of stuff is something that can be done relatively in short time. And then for the future, we will see whether we basically get automated away, my work gets automated away, or whether I can keep my work to be, the human side of the work where it can't be automated.
Alex the Entrepreneur, thanks so much for your time today. This has been an awesome conversation. What's the best place if people want to follow you, or is it YouTube or Twitter? What's the best place for people to connect with you?
Yeah, I'd say you can go on YouTube and search for Alex the Entrepreneur, and that's probably the best spot. If you do want to stalk me on Twitter, you can Google Alex the Entrepreneur Twitter, and you should be able to find me, although my usernames are all clunky. So it's also fine if you don't follow me, because it's too much alpha leak. So I'll be following you if you make your steps in the space.
This has been fun. Yeah, this has been fun. I mean, we've both been doing stuff for Badger, and this is the first time we actually chatted. So it's awesome to meet you, and thanks so much for your time today.
Amazing. I really appreciate your time as well, and you have an amazing one.
All right, you too. Take care.